So again, thank you all for coming. This is Voice of the Community, Reflection on the Word. And Sister Phyllis is going to share her reflection on today's readings with us. I'd like you to pay attention, and I'd like you to imagine, what if it was me sharing a reflection? What if the Spirit is calling me to do this? Just imagine the possibilities. That's all I'm saying just now. Okay. Nice and loud, Sister Phyllis. And
well, thank you all for being here. There's some folks who may come in later because they want to come, but they're doing coffee and donuts, so they need their work.
And then, sister, can you use your outdoor voice?
nice and loud.
Okay. Today we celebrate Jesus Christ, King of the universe. But the title King has never meant so much to me because I never knew a king and I don't know any royalty. So I thought perhaps a better title might be Jesus Christ, Servant of the Universe. So when Jesus was in the desert for 40 days, he was tempted and he rejected power or kingship, any type of domination, wealth, and fame. Jesus never wanted to be king. He usually went away when people wanted to make him king. The only time he let himself be taken as king was when he rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, not a very kingly sight. At the Last Supper, Jesus wanted his followers his disciples to understand two things: servanthood and communion. One, we are to be servants to one another. He showed what he meant by washing feet. And two, Jesus wanted us to share with each other, to stand with each other, to be a community. It's those two things, service and communion, that are the most important in following Jesus. We here in our parish seek to serve others through our actions for social justice, climate integrity, through SVDP, through our service to the homebound and elderly, and in the many ways we help our neighbors and our families grow in helping others. We also try to be community with each other. As we listen and talk to each other, invite people to sit with us, to listen to people from the many different cultures and learn of their struggles to be part of the United States, and let them teach us the many different ways to celebrate and become one with each other. I heard a story the other day from one of our sisters who works at Rosehaven, which is a drop-in center for women who live on the streets. One of the women finally got her own apartment. But after 4 months or so, she complained of being too lonely, being by herself. And she was wondering if she should return to the streets where she knew community. So community is very important. Just think back over the last 2 years and how we missed coming together to connect face to face, and the delight we felt when we all could come and gather, even with masks. Being on Zoom helped fill in some of the feelings of community, but we as human beings need to be in communion with each other. It may be why Jesus didn't want to be king. He would lose community, lose being equal with others, and being in communion with others. So as we celebrate Jesus Christ, King of the universe, let us remember we celebrate service and community. So let's just take about maybe 30 seconds just to think about what I've just said, but also what Father said in his homily today. Two different views on the same thing. Okay, I would invite anyone who wishes to share, just to speak up.
Yeah, come on over here.
I think one of two things really struck me today was when Father said Christ hanging on the cross was the altar, was an altar that he served on. And I'd never thought of it that way before. I always thought of it as the sacrifice of his cross. And I guess the other thing was when he talked about those not going to church, how full Christ could enter their life. And I never thought about that either. Thank you.
What else?
I'm going to share again. Well, I mean, I thought of exactly how you thought about Christ being the servant for all. And I went back to my days when I got my Master of Divinity, and we were taught that all of those titles were actually titles for the Romans. So Savior of the world, all those titles. So it was like saying, Jesus is so opposite of these leaders. The way Jesus rules is not at all like the rulers of Rome. And how it was really subversive using that language. And so kind of thinking of King of the world in that way of being subversive, as he's not into power, he's not into domination. And I guess what struck me again is that isolation and how important community is. And I work with elders who are in adult care homes or retirement centers. And we have, I don't know what we call it, but people are dying from loneliness. And not being able to see their families. And sometimes I'm the one that's there when they're dying, and even their families cannot come in, especially if they die of COVID. And just how heartbreaking it is for families, it's unresolved grief, for caregivers, for the people dying, for everybody. And just like, I don't know, just saying that out loud and stating that grief that we're all carrying in this time. I appreciate that, sister. So I think that's all I have to say.
I can relate to what you just said because our community has gone through the same thing. When our sisters moved to Mary's Woods, which is our assisted living and more care, and all of a sudden it's locked down and they have to stay in their rooms. they feel very lonely too. They hate it. We're not used to that. We're used to being in community. And and we can't go in to visit them because, but now, right now, it's not lockdown, so it's better, and they can at least come, and they can at least be two at a table instead of eating in your room. So, yeah, that's what happens. People, we need community, whether we like it or not. There are a few loners, but very few. Most people need to be around other people in some way, connected, not just around, but connected somehow. And that's what Jesus really felt, I think, what he was trying to say at the Last Supper. We are connected. What he said was, love one another as I have loved you. Well, it's the same deal. We are connected. So.
And the people God He chose to be in community with are not the people that we would suspect or think would be there. And that's so encouraging because it's so inclusive, it's so welcoming, it's forgiving and full of mercy.
Am I close enough for this?
Yes.
I just appreciated the broadening from what Father Jerry said this morning, the concept and what you're saying, Phyllis. I worked for 10 years at a school called Christ the King. And it was hard to embrace that all the time for all the kids. And usually it came down to the idea of service, but it is much broader, and the broadening beyond what we call Christianity, as Jerry said this morning. I wish I had heard that 20 years ago. But yeah, it was good. Thank you.
Anybody on Zoom have something they'd like to share?
I'd just say that I like the
I
concept.
I would like to say something. Excuse me. First, when Father Jerry was talking about all you have to have is Christ in your heart to be ready to listen to him or to hear him. And he was talking about, whether you're a Muslim or a Hindu, it really touched me because when I was growing up, it was like, if you were a Baptist, you were going to hell. And the only people that went to heaven were Catholics. And I kind of carry that with me in a negative tone, in the fact that I believed even as a child that didn't sound right, that everybody was important one way or another. And I believe there's only one God. We just honor him or serve him, respect him, our own ways. Each culture is a little bit different. And then the other thing I wanted to say to Sister Phyllis, or her comment about community, and about a month ago, I read an article in one of my science magazines, and it's called Death by Depression. And it was a study that was done because there were so many people, like the need for medicine for anxiety and depression over the COVID year, 2020, just spiked. And so they did this study, and it really was, it was an eye-opener to me. I mean, I personally am an introvert, so I don't mind quiet, but not continuously all the time. But it was just so, death by loneliness. I can understand that. Yeah. So that's about all that I have to say. I believe that sadness and depression can just, wipe out your will to live.
Thank you, Barbara. Jim, was it you who were speaking up?
Yeah, we were all shouting at the same time. That was unfortunate. Sorry about that. I've lost part of my train of thought, but I'll work my way back to it. I like the
Sorry.
idea of, as we talk in isolation, you know, Christianity really is a contact sport. It's hard to do it alone. It gives you time for your Bible study, but without other groups to, like this one, for example, to bounce ideas off of, it's hard not to stagnate a little bit. And it's been a strange time for that, definitely the last year or two. I know how much my mom loves visits, even though she may take naps during the movie or whatever it is we're doing. But she's just so happy that somebody came. So it's very touching to see that. I also liked that Father said today that we're not really going in cold when we encounter a new culture. They already do have God, whether they're aware of him in that sense or not. And that reminds me of C.S. Lewis and how many people are challenged by the last battle, where one of the enemies of Narnia is actually accidentally pushed into heaven and goes, well, I was following the other guy, but I see what you mean and I understand now. And so many Christians are challenged by that, where, well, if you live the wrong life, then what are you doing in heaven? But you're still serving the one true God, even if you don't know his name at the time. And that's important stuff.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
I had the privilege of going with Barbara McCormick
Hang on, sorry.
to visit several people, Esther Klein, Doris Woolley. And Barbara, when you walked in that door,
Lonnie, I'm not sure you're being heard by the people on, can you just go stand up in front of the computer? Sorry.
sure. I just wanted to say that I had the honor of going with Barbara McCormick. And she kind of showed me the ropes with some people that were housebound for the most part. Doris Woolley and Esther Klein, and they were characters, but they adored Barbara when she came in and gave them communion. And they got a lot out of it. I know they did, but so did we. And that's a big, huge honor. So thank you very much.
Is Barbara in the crowd there? I have not seen you for quite some time.
Penalize me that for later on. It's okay.
Well, this morning is the first time I've heard a clergyman say that people have a way to heaven, even though they know that God is already in them, or Jesus is already in them, even though they may not know it. And that reminded me of a joke where this Baptist dies and goes to heaven, and he goes up and gets guided around heaven, showing that this is what Baptists are. Over here's the Mormons, and well, over here is the Seventh-day Adventists and stuff, and then Hindus, they're all up here. He says, well, yeah, but what's this? There's this wall down. What's this big wall for? He says, oh, and he says, what's on the other side? He says, oh, that's the Catholics. They think they're the only ones up
Anybody want to follow that?
This is Linda. I have a
I
comment.
think someone's talking. Hang on just a second if
Okay.
you're online. Go ahead now.
All right, this is Linda Coonrath. And yeah, that Egbert has that joke too. So that was a good one. But I have a comment that Christ is the king or the servant of the universe and of everyone. And even though some people have different ways of expressing their faith, we are all together in communion. And my struggle is how many regulations and fine tuning we're getting from the the Archbishop, that we can't have certain instruments playing in our church music, and we should be using chants, and we should be doing this. And why so many regulations and rules when we can express our love, our service, our joy in the way that comes natural to us, or the way that identifies with us? I'm finding the narrowness is almost an invitation to find other communions where they're more open and more loving towards everything. So that's my struggle.
Well, Linda, I'm glad you're the only one who struggles with
That's naughty.
that. I'm sorry, that was facetious, but I think you know what I mean, that we're with you.
Yeah.
That's why we're sitting
And
in
we,
here.
yeah. And one of the reasons why we're sitting in this room, listening to Sister Phyllis reflect on the word, as goes to the core of what Linda was saying. As we all know, there was a time when Linda could trade places with Jerry and preach to the entire community.
I just,
Jane,
can I make?
step right up to the computer, maybe, and if you're comfortable, remove your mask.
Yeah, well, but this is just a comment to what Linda was saying and other people, but I think sometimes we are forced to, sometimes things change and we have to look at that. And I think the Archbishop is doing what he believes in his heart is the right thing. We may not agree with it, but that's just an obstacle we are faced with our own faith. And even though a lot of us don't agree with that, look at what we got out of it. So we do gain things, but I do think he is coming from his heart. And I think we can't forget that, versus even though we don't agree with that, a lot of us, we just have to respect that he thinks what he's doing is the best. And it's just something we have to work around. And we got this great group from it. That's just what,
Yep. Thank you, Jane. Okay, anybody want the final word? I promise that we don't go too long with these sessions, so you have the right to give the final word, Michael.
I don't like it being the final word. That's not way. No, my mother converted to Catholicism from Southern Baptist in Macon, Georgia. That was like crawling over the wall. And kind of thinking about what you said, and I keep thinking about how we all, us human beings, are this big family, and you say, do you get along the same way with every member in your family? Right? You got all these differences, but we all, I think, is our nature as human beings to pursue goodness. And to me, what pursuing goodness means is responding to God, right? And I think that community is such a critical element in that. When I lived in Mexicali, and I remember one time I brought over 15 teenagers, which had its own challenge, but I brought them over, and they, about 2 days into it, they said, can we go back? And I said, why? They go, the streets are empty. There are no people.
Yeah.
They said, we don't understand our lives without it connecting with people. And I thought, that is really true. That is the core, a core element of our faith is the communion with others, right? And that's that spirit that I think that connects us. I always think of the Holy Spirit as that flowing between all of us, tying us together in one single fabric, if that makes sense. And that's the final word. Okay.
That's the
Carry it
perfect
with us
final
all
word.
week.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you.
And appreciation to you, Sister Phyllis, for sharing with us.